My name is Rick Knapp, and I'm a world geography teacher over at John Jay High School. It's kind of interesting. My path to where I am now started 30 years ago. I was an IA, instructional assistant for Northeast. I was working at Kruger Middle School, and I was a special ed assistant working in a severe and profound unit, and so I was the only male assistant, and so my job was to take care of primarily the male special ed students with their bathroom needs and their life skills and so on and so forth. And I did that for 3 years, from 1989 to 1992, with one break. A year prior, I joined the U.S. Army Reserves. So I enlisted as a private March 12th of 1988. And so the whole reason why I got into education in the first place was I graduated high school in 1987, joined the Army Reserves my freshman year at SAC. And so I was trying to figure out, well, I need a civilian job because the Army Reserves part-time. So my mom was a teacher, and she gave me guidance, hey, maybe you can go into being an IA, our school needs help. So, okay. She actually was teaching at Kruger Middle School, and so I went in and after basic training, after my advanced training, my military MOS was I was a tank mechanic. So I end up being a special ed assistant, and then I get called up for Desert Storm. So I go to Desert Storm, I come back, and I finish another year and a half over at Kruger Middle School. And then I was doing night school at SAC. I did that. I would have to say I was on the long graduation program. So I was at SAC for 5 years. I was working, I was taking night school, and then I finally had enough hours in my GPA to where I could transfer over to UTSA. So I was at UTSA from 1992 to 1996, and my degree plan was I wanted to be an Army officer, full-time Army officer. And so I got a history degree because I love history. Well, the drawdowns, I should say, the military drawdowns after Desert Storm, the competition was so intense that I did not get an active duty commission. I got commissioned as an officer in the United States Army Reserves in 1996. And from 1992 to 1996, off and on, I was a substitute teacher for Northeast. And I would substitute Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and go to school Tuesdays and Thursdays all day doing my Army ROTC stuff. So I get my commission, to make a long story short, I get my commission, I go off to, in the Army, we have what we call Officer's Basic Course. So what they do is they teach you how to be an officer and all that kind of stuff. And so for what I needed to do, it was 26 weeks long. So during that time, I was trying to figure out, well, what the heck am I going to do? I need a civilian job, so I was like, okay, I'm going to go into teaching. So I did not have a teaching degree or anything like that. I just had a degree in history, so I needed to get certified. So I flew down from Maryland. I was at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland, doing my officer basic course. I flew down and got involved into the Region 20 program. I think maybe they changed his name. I call it Region 20, but the ESC 20 right there. So I was involved in that program, and it was a really good program. And so in 1997, I finished that program, and I got certified, lifetime certification in generic special education. And then a year later, I went and took the test, and I got lifetime certified for secondary history, because I love history. So my first job was with San Antonio ISD, and I was a special ed teacher, and I taught for 2 years at J.T. Brack Elementary in the Alizon Apache Courts. I was a self-contained teacher. So I stayed at San Antonio ISD for 2 years, and then I ended up transferring over to Northeast, and I stayed at Northeast from 1999 to 2003, but I got deployed for the war on terrorism because of 9/11. So I deployed into Central Asia and had to do Army stuff, and then I came back and I had to switch schools because when you deploy, sometimes you have to do that. And so my special ed career, I've done pretty much almost the entire spectrum under the spec ed umbrella. I've been self-contained, I've taught resource, I've taught inclusion, And then I ended up following a family member. My brother's employed here at the district, and so I came to Northside in 2006, and I was the self-contained teacher at Cable Elementary, and the spec ed coordinator.
Yeah.
So what I did was I enjoyed working there, and then I got called up for Iraq. So I went to Iraq, came back, and ended up at John Jay High School, and did secondary spec ed there until I transferred over to general ed. And along the process, I got a master's in ed leadership. I'm almost finished with a master's in history. And so my coming up to talk to you guys is that I just realized that I started out as an instructional assistant 30 years ago. And I've been teaching for 23 years now? And I wouldn't want it any other way. Because going through the different levels and going through the alternative certification, even being a substitute teacher, doing my time in special education has made me, in my opinion, a better teacher, because I'm pretty strong on classroom management. I have the content down. I've seen all sorts of environments in special education and in general education, and it's made me a more rounded, experienced educator. And so I guess what I could say to you guys is that it doesn't matter how old you are. All that matters is, taking the first step. When I first started teaching, I was 29 years old. And so, and now I look at the younger teachers coming in, and just like when I became an officer, I had already had 8 years Army experience, so that made me a better officer. So having experience as a substitute teacher and as an IA, I feel that's made me a better teacher, and that's given me, I can see how the school community works. I can see how the support staff really support the educators in the classroom, because without you guys, nothing really works. I would be working 3 times as hard if I didn't have my assistants, the IAs in the classrooms back when I was in spec ed. So it's given me a better perspective. And concurrently with but I retired in 2010 as a captain in the U.S. Army Reserves. And the life experiences that I've had outside of education has been able to enrich my teaching. I teach world geography. I've been all over the world. I can tell my students what it actually feels like to be in a 133-degree desert. The hottest temperature I ever felt naturally was the sun bouncing off the tarmac at King Fahd International Airport, and also at KKMC, 148 degrees. They had to bring us in. I can tell my students that stuff. And so the life experiences that I had outside of being a teacher, whether it was an IA or a substitute teacher or a tank mechanic or an Army officer, like I said, has just made me have more of a toolbox that can help me teach. So that's primarily what, my story.
And it was amazing.